Kawa, macho.
Ucho taja.
Isquecha, uchicha.
4 de esos grandes. Vamos.
These are some of the sights and sounds of Ayacucho. In 2012, UNBC and the Peruvian Forensic Anthropology Team hosted a pilot field school to this region of Peru. Students from universities throughout North America came here to study issues of human rights and social justice.
Well, at UNBC, we have a real interest and commitment to experiential learning. And so we've had field schools to many different parts of the world, and this one really grew out of the connection between the geography program and the Guatemalan Forensic Anthropology Foundation. And it was through that connection that we then met the Peruvian Forensic Anthropology Team, the EPAF. And there was a commitment on both of our parts to have students from multi-disciplines, from many disciplines, from anthropology, geography, environmental science, psychology, and so on, to come together to look at the issues of human rights, social justice, environmental issues, and so on, in this one setting that's quite unique as a place where political violence was extreme in this region of Peru and Ayacucho. There's just nothing left on the monuments.
The background context is an essential component to experiential learning. Before arriving in Lima, students were immersed in the historical circumstances and the political context that formed conditions in Ayacucho. The 1980s saw Ayacucho become the epicenter of an internal conflict fought between a Maoist rebel group known as the Shining Path and the Peruvian military. For 2 decades, the villages and towns that dot the landscape were victimized by violence and terror by both rebel and state forces. Civilians were not so much caught in the crossfire, but targeted in mass executions, forced disappearances, and rape. The majority of the 70,000 people dead were indigenous Quechua speakers. 15,000 remained disappeared, their families without closure. These are the facts of history, memorialized in photographs and museums. But the reality of memory must first be unearthed in the field.
It's a motivating field school, primarily because people will be exposed to a number of things, and that's pretty much the things we do, from forensics to memory issues to developmental issues and so on, psychosocial sequels of the conflict among these populations. And people will have the opportunity to broaden, in a way, the horizon, the spectrum of things they knew about Peru, for once, because they have also taken some, classes before coming here. And also perhaps to develop an interest to choose a specific thing.
The Peruvian Forensic Anthropology Team, or EPAF, conducts forensic investigations through exhumation and the analysis of human remains. Determining the method, mode, and manner of death is part of this process, but the primary goal is the humanitarian mission in providing closure for families with identification and restitution. EPAF's objectives take them directly into the communities that have been affected by Peru's violent past, allowing community members to share memories, reclaim their voice, and reconstruct the history of violence as they experienced it. EPAF also obtains biological and social profiles of the disappeared from their families, so that when and if their remains are located, they can be positively identified. And through all of this, EPAF works to unify communities in the creation of cooperative networks that allow victims and their families to assert their rights as equal citizens in Peruvian society.
The core of this field school as well is to share with you the way we work. and why we do this, and why we think that all of this is actually integrated into one single thing. That you cannot just, do away with one piece and stay with the other one. The whole thing is a whole. Okay, and this logic and this reasoning is just pure scientific reasoning that you can apply in anything you do.
The first few days in the field outside of Lima were spent in Waitara. While students adjusted to the extreme change in elevation, they were able to experience the process of forensic investigation. Student teams spent 3 days in realistic scenarios designed to demonstrate the importance in the recovery and documentation of evidence. This work is driven not only on a legal basis for international human rights law, but also for families of the victims in forced disappearances, where they have a right and need to know of as much of the truth that can be obtained.
I think being here in Ayacucho really helps you understand the need to combine that sociocultural anthropology with the actual forensics and science, because you couldn't just come here and dig up bodies and do analysis on them, because these people don't understand what you're doing when you do that. You really need to come in and understand these communities, understand the pain that these people are going through, and really develop relationships with them before any of your work is going to have any kind of meaning.
The next destinations were in the geographically and politically isolated communities of Ayacucho, Huaymanquiquia, Saxamarca, and Huaya. It's up here in these high elevation valleys of the Andes where the echoes of Peru's internal armed conflict still reverberate on the landscape. It's not a sadness and sorrow that jumps out at you. In fact, the people are warm, humble, and here in Huaymanquiquia, welcoming to those who want to listen.
There's a really big silence and a really big deep suffering that's happening here, and people just aren't acknowledging it, and people really ignoring what's happening. And that the first couple days that we were in Lima, you could completely ignore everything that's been happening here, but as soon as you come here, you can just sense that there's something that's happened and there is a suffering among people.
The history in Ayacucho is so complex because there are a lot of divisions between ethnic groups, between genders, between old and young people. It's a history that can be unified because there are a lot of interest of antagonisms, of rivalries, and it's every social sector that you can see has his own version of the history.
In every city, every town, every village, there is someone that has a story. And this story is both a history and a memory. It is both collective and individual. It is obtained through the simple act of witnessing, of listening to the stories of murder, loss, and trauma.
For EPAF, it's very, very important, the memory. The justice is the second step, you know, because here in Peru, there are some projects that have been waiting for 20, 30 years, and they want an answers.
Answers do not come easy. Sharing the memory is for justice, catharsis, and the hope that individual reparations will eventually come from the Peruvian government. Lives here have been forever changed. Cornelio was 12 years old in 1984 when he and 16 others were taken from the village by state forces. He walked us through his story, showing us the place that lived in his nightmares for so many years, the place by the river where he was spared and so many others were executed.
And an association was actually...
Tomás was also 12 years old in 1984. Another group of Peruvian soldiers killed his brother.
En mi mente es como si fuera una computadora, una memoria, ¿no? Siempre me acuerdo las cosas han pasado y me siento que un impotente, ¿no? Como no haber estado como ahora, ¿no? Para poder defenderse, para poder salir al frente, todo eso, ¿no? No, disculpa.
In 1992, Epifanio was 16 years old when the Shining Path marched into town and rounded up men from the village. She found her husband, her father, and her neighbor hacked with machetes. She speaks of this moment as the moment when she lost herself.
And ask for the return of her father and her husband. I never expected to have all these people just come up and open up and tell their stories. Excuse me. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking because it was a part that I completely ignored, you know, for so many years. And now it's like I want to do more. It has completely changed my perspective on things.
Percy described how he worked with people here. And it was about building relationships based on trust and taking the time and only moving as fast as that person and how he questioned them. And when he finished, I said, Percy, this is exactly what I would tell graduate students in my qualitative research course on how to best do research in Indigenous communities.
It takes time to rebuild trust, to unify communities, and to empower. The process here for justice, memory, and human rights may seem like a world away, but the struggle in Ayacucho is a struggle that is important for each and every one of us.
Believe it or not, it wasn't so much the forensic aspect. It was the humane aspect of anthropology, the sociocultural aspect of anthropology that I was really, really wanting to get. And I did. I got to see a part of my country, the people, the suffering, you know, what's really going on. And that's what I wanted to get, and I think I got it.